Okay, so have you ever heard the story of Joseph? It's like one of those stories that's almost too wild to believe, you know?
Yeah.
We're talking about like betrayal,
Right.
resilience, forgiveness, and this like rise to power. It's
Rise to
straight out of a movie.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're going to do a deep dive into Genesis chapter 47
Okay.
to see just how Joseph, who starts as a slave in Egypt,
Right.
ends up using this like devastating famine to just reshape
Oh, wow.
the whole nation.
The whole nation.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating look at how one person
Right.
facing what seems like an impossible situation
Yeah.
can completely shift the balance of power and rewrite
Wow.
the rules of society.
Yeah, so it all starts with this famine.
Okay.
It's so bad that it's not just like impacting Egypt.
Right.
It's also like ravaging the land of Canaan,
Wow.
where, Joseph's family lives.
Oh, wow.
So this puts him in an incredibly powerful position.
Right.
You see, he's now in charge of all of Egypt's grain reserves. Right.
The only source of food in a starving world.
So the text really paints this vivid picture
Yeah.
of just how desperate people were.
Yeah.
Like imagine
Wow.
you're an Egyptian citizen, your family is, on the brink of starvation.
Right.
You're standing in front of Joseph,
Yeah.
pleading for your life.
Wow.
The book of Genesis describes people literally begging him,
Begging him.
saying, "Why should we die in your presence?"
Oh, wow.
It's hard to even fathom the pressure
Yeah.
he must have been under.
Right.
So what does he do?
Yeah.
Does he just give the grain away?
Well, he could,
Yeah.
but that's not the path he chooses.
Right.
He sees this crisis as an opportunity. He crafts this multi-stage plan
Okay.
that not only addresses the immediate need for food,
Okay.
but it also allows him to completely restructure Egypt's economy.
This leads us to the first stage of his plan, which on the surface seems pretty straightforward.
Okay.
People exchange their money for grain.
Classic supply and demand.
Right.
But then things take a turn.
Exactly, when the people's money runs out.
Right.
Joseph doesn't turn them away.
Okay.
Instead, he says,
Right.
all right, bring your livestock,
Wow.
your horses, your sheep, your cattle,
Okay.
anything of value.
Okay.
It's like he anticipated this very scenario.
And the text in Genesis 47:1
Okay.
actually states that they brought their livestock to Joseph,
Yeah.
and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for horses,
Right.
the flocks, the herds, and the donkeys. So he fed them with bread for all their livestock that year.
Wow.
It's kind of a chilling image when you think about it.
It is, yeah.
People trading their livelihoods just to survive another year.
Just to survive.
But it doesn't even end there.
You're right.
It keeps going.
Eventually, the people have nothing left
Right.
but their land,
Wow.
the very foundation of their existence.
Right. Yeah.
And in their desperation, they offer that up to Joseph as well. Genesis 47:2 states, Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them, so the land became Pharaoh's.
So Joseph basically uses this famine
Yeah.
to transfer ownership of all the land
Oh,
directly to Pharaoh.
talk about a power shift.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
But there's this one little detail in the text
Okay.
that really stood out to me.
Okay.
It says that Joseph didn't buy the priest's land. They received a regular food allowance
Directly from Pharaoh.
directly from Pharaoh.
Oh, okay.
So their land remained independent.
Interesting.
What do you make of that? It
Yeah.
seems like such a calculated move. Like
Yeah.
he was trying to keep the religious authorities
side.
on his side, yeah.
It's fascinating, and it speaks to his strategic thinking.
Right.
The priests held significant influence
Right.
in Egyptian society, and their support
Yeah,
would have been crucial for maintaining stability,
especially.
especially during such radical change.
Right.
By exempting them from this land transfer,
Okay,
he ensures their loyalty
okay.
and avoids any potential conflict with, the religious establishment.
So with Pharaoh now in control of all this land,
Yeah.
what does Joseph do next?
Right.
He could have just turned Egypt into one giant state-run farm.
He could have,
Right,
but that wouldn't have been very sustainable.
right.
Instead, he puts in place a system
Okay,
that's both clever
okay,
and, dare I say, a bit ruthless.
okay.
He essentially creates a nation of tenant farmers.
Tenant farmers.
Yeah.
So everyone's working for Pharaoh now,
Yeah.
but they're not exactly slaves, are they?
No, it's a bit more nuanced than that.
Okay.
They're allowed to keep 4/5 of the harvest they produce.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
You got to give people some incentive to work hard.
Precisely. Joseph understood that a system that just relies solely on force
Right,
is rarely sustainable in the long run.
Right.
So by letting these farmers keep a big portion of their harvest,
Yeah.
he creates a system where their hard work benefits them
Right.
and their family.
But of course, Pharaoh gets his cut too.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
1/5 of every harvest goes directly to Pharaoh.
Wow.
This ensures a steady stream of revenue for the state,
Right.
giving Pharaoh immense economic power.
It's brilliant, really.
Yeah.
Joseph managed to solve this immediate crisis of the famine
Right.
while simultaneously transforming Egypt into this centralized state
Wow.
with Pharaoh at the top.
At the apex, yeah.
This brings up an interesting question for me, though.
Okay.
What was the long-term impact of this new system? Did it work as intended?
That's a question that continues to fascinate historians and scholars.
Yeah.
On one hand, there's no doubt
Yeah.
that this centralization of power allowed Pharaoh to undertake large-scale projects that benefited the nation.
Like, what kind of projects are we talking about?
Think of like irrigation systems,
Okay.
infrastructure improvements, maybe even military expansion.
Okay, so things that probably wouldn't have been possible when the land was all divided up among all these individual farmers.
Yeah.
So you could argue that in a way,
Uh-huh.
Joseph's actions paved the way
Yeah.
for like a more prosperous and stable Egypt.
Potentially.
Mm,
But it's important to remember that this prosperity and stability
yeah.
came at a cost.
What do you mean?
Well, the individual farmers who were once independent landowners
Right.
are now essentially tenants,
Right.
beholden to Pharaoh.
Wow.
They've lost a lot of their autonomy and freedom.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if there was any pushback
Oh, yeah.
from the people.
Yeah.
I mean, they were forced to give up their land
Right.
and their independence.
The text doesn't really go into detail about any resistance,
Okay.
but it's certainly a possibility.
Right.
Whenever there's a huge shift in power,
Right.
there are bound to be those who benefit
Yeah.
and those who are left behind.
Right. And even if this new system led to like overall prosperity,
Right.
it's very likely that some segments of society
Yeah.
felt those negative consequences more than others.
More acutely, yeah.
Yeah, it's a reminder that even the most well-intentioned policies
Right.
can have these unintended consequences.
Absolutely.
And that the decisions of leaders,
Yeah.
even those made during like times of crisis, can
Right.
have a ripple effect
Yeah.
that extends far beyond their goals.
It's also a fascinating example of how economic policies can be used
Yeah.
to shape society
Okay.
and shift these power dynamics.
Right.
Makes you think about how these same principles
Yeah.
are at play even today.
Absolutely. I mean, think about how governments use taxes,
Right.
subsidies, and regulations to influence economic activity
Right.
and really shape social outcomes.
Yeah.
In a way, we're still dealing with the same questions that Joseph faced.
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah, how do we balance individual freedom with the needs of the collective? How do we make sure there's fairness and justice
Yeah.
in a system where resources are inevitably unequally distributed?
These are timeless questions.
Yeah.
And Joseph's story offers this really compelling case study
Yeah.
that forces us to confront them head on.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that history isn't just a collection of dusty old stories.
Right.
It's a rich tapestry of human experience that we can learn from,
Yeah.
even thousands of years later.
And this particular story,
Yeah.
with its themes of power, resilience,
Right.
and these unintended consequences of,
Right.
even the best laid plans,
Yeah.
feels particularly relevant in our modern world.
It certainly does. It encourages us to think critically
Yeah.
about the decisions of our leaders, the systems we live in,
Yeah.
and the role that we each play in shaping the world around us.
So as we're wrapping up our deep dive into Joseph,
Yeah.
what are some of the key takeaways
I
that
like
you want to leave our listener with today?
Well, one thing that really stands out
Okay.
is Joseph's ability to turn a crisis into an opportunity.
Okay.
He didn't just react to the famine.
Yeah. Right.
He used it
Yeah.
as a catalyst for this complete societal transformation.
He was a master strategist.
Oh, for sure.
That's for sure. But it wasn't just about clever planning.
Right.
Joseph also had this remarkable Resilience.
Resilience, yeah.
Gene
This is the
Roy.
guy who was betrayed by his own brothers,
Sold into slavery.
sold into slavery, falsely imprisoned.
Right. And through it all,
Yeah,
he
but-
never lost sight of his goals.
That's a powerful lesson for all of us.
Right.
Life throws curveballs,
Yeah.
but it's how we respond to those challenges
Right.
that truly defines us.
Absolutely.
Joseph could have easily just become
Yeah.
bitter and resentful,
Right.
but instead, he chose to focus on what he could control,
Yeah.
on using his talents and his position to make a positive impact.
He also demonstrates
The importance of forgiveness.
forgiveness. Yeah.
I mean, imagine
being in his position.
having the power to punish those who wronged you.
Yeah, but instead of seeking revenge,
He ultimately forgives his brothers,
right,
welcomes them into Egypt, saves them from the famine.
it really speaks to this higher purpose.
Yeah.
A belief that even in,
The darkest of times,
the darkest of times.
there's always hope for reconciliation and redemption.
So we've got strategy,
Right.
resilience, forgiveness.
Okay.
Any other big lessons?
Well, we can't overlook the complex ethical questions
Okay.
that Joseph's story raises.
Yeah,
Yes, he saved Egypt from starvation,
right,
but he also fundamentally altered the power structure
right.
of the nation.
Like the nation, yeah.
He created a system where Pharaoh had
Yeah.
almost absolute control
Yeah, over the land and the people.
over the land and the people.
It makes you think about the trade-offs
Yeah.
we're often faced with, both as individuals
Right.
and as a society.
As a society,
Sometimes even the best decisions. Yeah.
have unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, yeah.
And even the most noble goals
Right.
can be achieved through,
Morally ambiguous.
morally ambiguous means. Yeah.
Joseph's story doesn't offer any easy answers.
No.
It challenges us to grapple with these complexities, to
Wow.
think critically about the relationship between power,
Mm-hmm.
responsibility, and the choices we make when we're faced with adversity.
It's a story that's been debated and analyzed for centuries.
Yeah.
And it still resonates with us today
Yeah.
because it speaks to these,
Timeless human dilemmas.
timeless human dilemmas.
Exactly. And perhaps that's the most important takeaway of all.
Okay.
Joseph's story isn't just like a historical account.
Yeah.
It's this mirror that reflects our own values, our own struggles,
Right.
and our own capacity for both good and evil.
Well said. And on that note,
Okay.
we'll leave our listener with this final thought.
Okay.
As you're reflecting on Joseph's journey,
Yeah.
ask yourself,
What would you have done in his position?
right?
How would you have balanced the needs of the many with the rights of the few?
Yeah.
What lessons can we learn from this ancient tale
Right.
that might help us navigate the challenges of our own time?
It's a great question.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into one of history's most compelling figures.
My pleasure.